Hi, this is Dave Chenault with Skylight Systems, and in this video, I'm going to show you the basics of SideKick 365 Forms. SideKick 365 Forms is used to have HTML forms and JavaScript bind into lists in SharePoint, so you can have very rich and powerful forms that are written using HTML and JavaScript and give you all the powerful features of those different environments and bind that data into SharePoint lists. This is a really revolutionary concept because all of the information that is stored on these forms is kept in SharePoint, and everything you do to create these forms is just standard HTML5 and JavaScript or jQuery. So let's take a look. Here's a simple form that we created that shows all of the different data types we support. We've got everything from currency and choices and checkboxes, picture fields, we've got hyperlink fields, lookups, etc. And we can do a lot of interesting things whenever we use things like HTML and JavaScript together. We can do things where we hide and show various parts of this form. So when I come into this form here, and I wanted to take a look at this section here where it says, hello, I'm Radio 1. Now I'll click on Radio 2, Radio 3. You can see here that it's switching different values on the fly by just hiding and showing different divs in the page. Also, I've got the URL where that picture is stored and also the hyperlink URL information. So there's a different form used for editing than what you see on display. And by the same token, we have this same form used when you create a new item. Now, how do we do all this? Well, going back into the Forms Manager again, notice that I've got the HTML sample list. I've got all my different fields, and I just simply select the load HTML, and I would navigate to this field, or I'm sorry, to this file that has all the HTML in it right here, and I bind it to it just by selecting it and saying open, and it'll bind that form, and all the data is going to be stored into my SharePoint list. Same thing now, the idea whenever I want to bind in custom code. Now I can have JavaScript to do validation when I do the actual definition of the field, but I can also do it in other ways. Let's take a look at the custom code tab. And here I can go to HTML samples. I can select the event, which is a load. And here I can select JavaScript, which is this right here sample, which we're happy to send you, that can then run JavaScript on the HTML page to hide and show different things, to select radio buttons depending upon the state of the form, etc. So very, very powerful. You can have JavaScript attached to on load and on save events. We also support jQuery as well. And then you define all of your fields right here in the way it looks on your HTML page. Now also very importantly is you can define your own CSS, your custom style sheets. So if you wanted to have a very powerful form with your own branding, etc., you just have a CSS and you attach it here to that entity list. Very straightforward to do. Now looking over here, we've got all the different entities. These are similar to lists in SharePoint, and you'll have 15 per Forms Manager add-in. Some of these can be used for lookups. For example, in communities here, it's going to be used strictly as a lookup value on my form, which is my HTML sample. Other ones can be used for forms. So let's take a look at how that works. Going back into my form, what I'll notice when I do the edit option is I have this lookup here. And I see east, north, south, and west selected. Now if I go to communities, this is another entity. Here are my items here. And we're going to be enhancing this in the future. Right now, we just let you select an item. But coming with upgrades in the works, we'll be able to select data from these lists as well and to put those into your form. So very powerful relational capabilities are also available. Now, some other things to quickly look at is how do you manage all this? Let's go in and take a look behind the scenes. When I look at this list, I can see that all of my data from the form is saved into my SharePoint list, and they're just SharePoint lists, just like you'd expect. You can just pick and show any of these fields that you want. And even more interestingly, behind the scenes, we're creating columns. So in the example of a choice list, we're able to pull values from SharePoint right into that HTML form. So what that means is you can do definition of choice list in SharePoint, and when I go into that form and I take a look at it, I will see those options from that choice list rather than a lookup list. And let's look at that. So if I go in here to say HTML samples, and I go into a choice list as opposed to a lookup list, there's the options I had just seen in the field definition, right? Very, very powerful stuff. I can also go in and pick things where I can put in different websites that have pictures I want to store, URL hyperlinks, etc. Okay, so the very last thing to look at is in Manager, there's a tab we have not discussed much and we'll get to in a future video, but also workflows. And we support the idea of a workflow where you can have a simple sequential workflow. In other words, you have on an entity, you can go in and define, let's do a new work step. And you can say work step order 1, and the approver column is going to be from those people pickers that are on that page. So every one of the people you want in your workflow, go ahead and define a people picker field for them. And every time you create a form, it'll route that to that person for you, or a group. You can also do that. And the status you can put on the form itself so you know where you are in the workflow, etc. Okay, so just wrapping things up, we use the manager to do a lot of important things. We can define custom columns. We can bind HTML to the different entities. We can bind custom code to a form load or a form save. We can bind CSS. We can define workflows, and we can define all of our entities right in the manager. And when you do that and you bind them, it ends up with different forms available for you to fill in, just like you'd expect in the old InfoPath days, but now it's all HTML and JavaScript, and it's all sort of managed behind the scenes with our SideKick 365 Forms add-in. So that's enough for this video. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to info@skylightsystems.com, and we'll get right back to you. Thanks for taking a look, and there are more videos on the way.